Hello, I'm Erin Rivers, and along with my year group across the country, I've recently finished Year 11, and throughout my 5 years attending an ordinary high school, I've experienced every inch of what school has to offer in the 21st century, whether that's a new level of our behaviour or the new specifications for exams. I'm here to uncover the reality of a modern day high school and ultimately question whether the education still works and is effective for every student. This is Facing High School. Coming up on Facing High School, we hear from the students and teachers on what they would change about the education system.
The massive challenges lie, they're primarily financial at the moment, balancing a budget.
We all demand respect of each other when respect is earned.
The idea of coursework, I think, should get re-evaluated.
Everything is good for people to do good in their exams and they get points to go to university, but some people won't want to go.
Yes, exams are really important because you are setting them up, but they don't define you.
Almost all teachers work extremely hard, and there can be a lack of appreciation from both students and from parents.
I would completely reimagine the exam systems.
We find quite often that we are supporting students, parents at their lowest, at their most frustrating and difficult times.
Let's start off with some facilities. I'm very aware, and it's crazy to think that there is a whole generation that haven't stepped foot into a modern day high school. Throughout the documentary, you're going to see loads of different facilities of a modern day school. First of all, this is the hall. Assemblies happen here, productions, all sorts really. This is a pretty typical English classroom. You'll probably find the same setup in RE, geography, history, just with slightly different display boards. I now want to hear from the students. I'm very aware that every student develops, they learn different things, and just their whole view of high school can be dramatically different, and I think it's so crucial to listen to their opinions.
I'm in Year 11.
I'm in Year 7.
Year 8.
I am in Year 10.
I'm in Year 7.
I am in Year 11.
I'm in Year 8.
I'm in Year 10.
Year 8.
I'm in Year 11.
My favourite subject is drama because we can work with other people other than our friends.
Photography.
This is PE because I like being outside and being active.
It's not even photography. I just had that last lesson, so I don't know what it is. Yeah.
My least favourite subject is RE.
Probably physics, just because none of it goes in. And like, you know them little equations where you have to remember like the fraction and you have to times it by 100? They always get to me.
Maths or chemistry, I just find it really hard to remember stuff.
Maths, because there's lots of work.
My favourite thing about school is the fact that when you need help, there's always somebody there to help you.
Break time. Well, no, in lesson it's like actually feeling like you've done something in the class.
Getting to spend time with my friends at lunch and break.
Probably the teachers, because they're so like caring and like there's nobody that's not helpful.
My least favourite thing, staying. No, but like no.
Getting up early in the morning.
Not on the starting times. I think we start way too early and we're expected too much of, as well as just the attitude around school in general. The teachers think we're some perfect school, but I also think that within the students and the teachers, we all demand respect of each other when respect is earned.
How far away classes are from each other. You get more education time if classes and groups were like closer together.
One thing that I'd change about the education system is in English and stuff, like you just choose what type of exam you want to do, like a speaking one or creative writing one.
I think more subjects should be on offer.
I think we should be able to drop subjects early if we have no interest in them. For example, I don't enjoy music, so I should be able to drop it early. And
in tests there should be less like remembering and like more of like you can like read out your book.
I feel like a lot of the stuff that we learn in like science and maths is just, I don't feel like I'm ever going to use it, so I think it's a bit pointless.
It's that everything is geared for people to do good in their exams and they get points to go to university, but some people won't want to go.
I don't know. I don't even know why they changed it from 9 to 1 about the grading for GCSEs. Like, everyone still compares them to the A to like whatever it is U, and yet like they still keep it as 9 to 1. So I don't see why they do that.
I mean, I think the way they teach is specifically to fit exams. It doesn't suit most people.
I feel like we should learn more about kind of pay bills and stuff like that, and then also kind of British history. I feel like stuff that we learn in history, we should learn more about like empire and stuff like that.
Yeah.
More modern history.
Yeah, definitely, like with like modern world as well.
Yeah.
I'd change the timing of the exams. With all the curriculum that you have to learn over 2 years, I'd make it so that in year 10, at the end of year 10, you do an exam about all the stuff you've learned in year 10, and that'd be 50% of your GCSE. And then at the end of year 11, you do all the stuff that you learn in year 11, and that'd be the second part of your GCSE.
That's it. That's it.
Obviously, I wanted to hear from the teachers as they're so important, so it's time to get an insight of what being a teacher is really like.
Camera rolling?
What do you both teach?
We're English teachers, although I have also been dabbling in PE today.
I am a science teacher.
I'm a secondary school maths teacher.
What made you want to be a teacher?
I don't think it's something that I always wanted to get into, but I've always loved learning and loved finding out about things.
Well, at school, my one thought about my future career was I was absolutely not going to be a teacher. I thought it was stupid. Why would I go to school just to work in a school? And then, after university and trying a few different things, I did some work with young people, with teenagers. I was doing English as a foreign language as a way to travel, and I loved it. And I had this horrible moment where I was like, oh no, I'm a teacher.
When looking at possible alternative careers, I realised that what really meant a lot to me and what really inspired me was education and helping young people fulfil their dreams.
I knew I wanted to be a teacher straight off. It's because I loved my teachers so much at school. So I had like wonderful English teachers, and they were just so inspiring. So we'd read books and just have such a lovely time. And I just thought, that's exactly what I want to do. I just want to read books with young people and make them love it. So that's why I became a teacher. How's that working out? Do you know what? Still to this day, I get shocked by the fact that they love a book.
Yeah.
You know, a book that they thought, no. So.
What's your favourite thing about your job?
I love inspiring young people, I love motivating them, and I love being there for them when they need me.
My main thing would be working with students. That's the best bit.
Yeah.
The getting to know the students, feeling that connection. You love your students, you love all of them a little bit. But yeah, it comes from that sort of desire for them to do well and that kind of connection with people.
Love my job. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to work with young people, to get them to find out about things that they don't know much about.
Yeah, for me too, it's the young people. I always thought it would be the subject, and actually the relationships that you get with students over the years are just absolutely fantastic, and it's never ever boring. I never clock watch.
No.
I mean, sometimes I'm like, how has that day gone so fast? And it's just because they keep you on your toes and constantly surprise you.
Many young people might not have someone at home to look after them. They might not have someone at home to push them in the right direction. And as a teacher, this is what I find the best part about my job.
And what is your least favourite part?
For me, I think it's the stuff around it. So the teaching and the planning of my lessons I really enjoy, but the kind of, I suppose, bureaucratic loopholes that we have to go through.
Yeah.
Loopholes, hoops.
Yeah.
Like most teachers, I would say that the workload can at times be too much, especially when it comes to a lot of marking, especially when it comes to doing a lot of admin. But it is an important part of the job, and these days it really can't be cut out.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure that comes from the government on schools to just focus on data. And for me, yes, exams are really important because you are setting them up, but they don't define you.
No.
And I think as education, it's about making decent, kind, curious, literate, interesting, happy people. And I think it's not seen in enough as a holistic experience. It's all because, and not through any fault of the school, it's pressure from above that puts so much on schools being judged on these numbers that are seen totally out of context.
The least favourite part of being a teacher is a close tie between two things, I would argue. The first one has got to be marking, because the evidence for marking isn't that it actually helps students really get any better, so you're spending a great deal amount of time doing something that you know doesn't really have much of an output. The second part of the frustration really is a real lack of appreciation. I think that almost all teachers work extremely hard, and there can be a lack of appreciation from both students and from parents.
It's the focus on numbers and data, and I think as well that sort of impacts our students, because we are told, you know, by the government we have to, you know, report grades, we have to let them know their progress by numbers and things like that.
And finally, do you think anything should change with how the education system works?
Well, that is a very, very difficult question, because I think we can only ever think about our own window and our own experiences. I think there is far too much of an emphasis placed on the true academic subjects, if you like. If you're more interested in becoming a mechanic or a joiner, or doing something that's not something where you might go off to study at university, then you're somehow made to feel that you're less of a person, or even not very intelligent.
I'd get rid of data. What the heck? If you have your... I don't think you need targets. I don't think you need the data. I think you need to know your students, and you need to know if they are doing their best. And as long as you can ascertain, because of your skills as a professional and your experience, that you're getting the most out of those students and that they are working their hardest and they are producing the best that is there for their ability, I actually think if we stripped all that other stuff away, we'd end up with a much happier cohort of students.
I would want young people to have more opportunities in and around school, to work on bigger projects that would require them to put together all the skills and all the bits of knowledge that they have learned in school, including in maths. Things like how to deal with climate change, things like how to protect the environment, things like how to deal with all the issues that young people really care about.
I would completely reimagine the exam system. So for me, there's a lot of students that I teach that don't particularly fit into an exam, so they can't write an essay or something like that. But if you listen to the way they talk about books, they're one of my like highest level students. They're wonderful, and they come out with the most sophisticated responses. But unfortunately, literacy is a barrier. I know in Canada, for example, teachers can actually assess through presentations. So they will do an independent presentation on a book, and that will be their almost GCSE.
And I would massively cut our workload.
Oh yeah.
Because you've got teachers leaving, I think it's the 5 years is the threshold. Yeah. People are leaving in droves. And there's an awful lot of focus on recruiting teachers, but there's not focus on retaining teachers. Yeah. And it's experience that makes you a good teacher.
GCSE exams, the end goal, the last hurdle for every student. When I was doing exams last year, the pressure got put on every student was so much more than I expected. In 2017, a new specification started to integrate into every school, now being graded 9 to 1, 9 being above an A star, 4 being a pass grade. How do you feel about your exams?
I mean, to be fair, I've done quite a little bit of revision, not a lot basically, but I'm actually kind of confident about it, just because you just got to think, just get them over and done with, then you get 10 weeks off.
Do you know, I'm actually getting less stressed out, but I don't think that's a good thing, because I feel like I've just had like my big stress about it, and now I'm losing motivation, which isn't great.
I'm alright. I'm not too fussed about them. Like, obviously I want to get good grades, but like just gotta do it.
I'm pretty confident I can pass everything, and that's all I really want.
In terms of revision, I've not been doing lots, but I've been just using YouTube a lot of the time.
I've been revising 2 hours on a school night and 3 hours at a weekend.
Wow.
I used to, but I mean, I'm losing motivation, honestly.
Do you think exams are the right way to be tested?
No, I don't think exams are the right way to be tested at all. I think, to be honest, sitting 250 students down, 250 odd students, whatever it is, putting them in a hall in silence for near on 2 hours just isn't the right way. I know myself, people like that don't learn or perform correctly in that way, especially people with bigger personalities, without sounding cocky, such as myself. It's just not the way they want to be learning or taught or judged.
No, not at all.
What do you think should be changed about exams?
It's most subjects are all exam now, and there's not a single person who suits exams perfectly. And you should at least broaden it to like a bit of coursework or something like that.
I think exams should be a way of getting tested, but also like how you're doing lessons and like the progress you've made should add to the amount of marks you could get.
Let's talk about behaviour. It's definitely arguable that behaviour is at its worst in the 21st century. A lot of teachers are stating that they have to concentrate more on behaviour rather than actually educating. So I want to talk to a behaviour team member to see what they think about this issue. What do you do in your job?
My job has, I suppose, four main parts. The first part of my job is I'm the Director of Pastoral and Behaviour, day-to-day responsible for the pastoral care of students in Year 7 to Year 11 and manage the PBO team, the Pastoral and Behaviour Officers. One's been called the Head of Year for Year 11, the Pastoral Leader for Year 11, so I'm responsible solely for their academic progress, but then also all the issues that impact on their academic progress, such as their attendance, their behaviour, and there are the pastoral wider holistic issues.
What's a typical incident you have to deal with?
There's no such thing as a typical day in my job, and that's one of the reasons I do the job, because it makes it worth getting up for. You never do know what you're going to walk into. I know a lot of people in education would say that to you, but certainly in a pastoral behaviour. Today, for instance, I've dealt with my first instance this morning was to do with a student who's really struggling in lots of different capacities, a Year 11 student, and to do with the CP side of that. And the end of my day was literally resolved chasing a pigeon around the science corridor and trying to put a box and rescue a pigeon before it did some damage to itself. So,
And do you find your job rewarding?
I do find my job rewarding. I think you couldn't probably do the job that I do if you didn't find it rewarding. You know, no getting away from it. We all come to school to pay our mortgage and pay our bills. Absolutely, you know, that needs to be tick that box. But absolutely, I think anybody who works in the pastoral, holistic, CP side of education, I think would tell you that the job is very, very hard at times. And if you didn't have those rewarding moments, how often? They tend to be less regular than the challenging and demanding moments. We find quite often that we are supporting students, parents at their lowest, at their most frustrating and difficult times, and that obviously can take an impact and does have an impact on yourself as well. But I think the highs are so high that thankfully when they do rarely come along, they keep you going until the next one.
And if you could change anything about the education system, what would you change?
I think a lot of aspects of education naturally change themselves anyway throughout as the years go on, as we've seen recently with the big change in terms of the GCSE system and the change moving forward with T levels and things like that. I think the academic side of education is constantly evolving and constantly changing. I think there are certain sides of pastoral and the bigger, more holistic side of education that change, but I think dealing with people, dealing with students, dealing with families, I think is probably one of the constants actually in education, and I think it's all the better for that.
We've heard from the students and we've heard from the teachers, but it's now time to hear from my head teacher and what he thinks about the education system. So, what does your job include?
When you asked me that question, I had to struggle for a bit, which sounds a bit funny, but I had to struggle because it is quite all-encompassing. Biggest thing about my job, I suppose, is safeguarding. Making sure that the students and the staff in this school are safe, not just from health and safety aspect, but also from every other aspect you could imagine. So electronic safeguarding, social media, external influences, etc. It's about well-being. It's about well-being of students. It's about well-being of staff. It's about the well-being of my leadership team. It's about being in a position where I can properly communicate to parents how well their son or daughter is doing, what we do as a school, and what the opportunities are for their son or daughter. I have an incredible raft of accountabilities. And I'm not saying that to complain, I think it's right. I'm accountable for safeguarding, that's the big one. I'm also accountable for things like asbestos, and for making sure all the trustees in this school are aware of our asbestos management policy. That's one tiny thing I'm talking about here. If I think about where some of the massive challenges lie, they're primarily financial at the moment, balancing a budget. I'm gonna have a little bit of a whinge now, but fundamentally the budgets for schools have been frozen for the last 5 years. Now that doesn't sound too bad, and the government will say that they're putting more and more money in, and more money as a total number has gone into education than ever before, but there are also more students in education than ever before, and the per pupil funding, the amount of money you get per pupil, is lower than it has ever have been since I've been in education.
And did you always want to be a head teacher?
No. I suppose that I never even knew what a head teacher really did when I was probably your age. I would quite stuffy people. I'm not saying I'm not stuffy, I probably am. But who I never had any contact with. And I suppose if I'm going to bore you a little bit with my life story, I only did A-levels because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And that's absolutely valid. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that kids have nowadays is pressure. And one of the pressures is, tell me what you're going to do with your life. Well, actually, a lot of the research shows that students won't have one job in their entire life, and that most kids will have a portfolio career. And that puts them in a position where, they need different things from school than maybe their granddads and grandmothers did.
Why do you think students misbehave?
Why do people misbehave? I think is a more important question, because students are people. We always like to say that, it's like they're different creatures, are teenagers, aren't they? Well, they are in the extent that they've got raging hormones and see things very differently, etc. However, they're going through a very difficult time in their lives, teenagers. When you're going through that emotional upheaval, and it's a biological one, you test things out. So there's a lot of students who will just test boundaries, and that's reasonable and that's fine, but boundaries are there. And when students are testing them, they need to realise that they don't cross them.
So moving on to exams, just quickly, do you think they, at the moment, are the right way to test students?
I don't think there is a right way. There are worst ways, because fundamentally the reason why we have exams is to benchmark, is to be able to compare students to each other. And in order to be able to do that, you need as comparable conditions as possible, exam conditions. Otherwise, it's not fair. You can't have one set of individuals with a more advantageous situation without due cause. But you've also got to have the kind of the same thing that they're doing, the same task, for you to be able to judge them, to be able to benchmark. Now, written exams are for that. There are more than written exams that you can use for that. And I believe that maybe there should be a bit of a change, and there should be more of, competency-based assessments. If you are looking at specific skills, knowledge and qualities that you want to show that you are competent in.
And finally, if you could change how the education system works, what would you change? Big question.
Right. Well, firstly, I believe we're lucky, and I believe in starting with a positive in this kind of situation, because it's too easy to say that the system is broken, that it's turning into an exam factory. I would like to rebalance accountability. I don't believe in no accountability. I believe I should be accountable. I believe that teachers should be accountable, but it should be for the right things. So currently we're accountable for exam results, and that's fine. And I'm not saying that should go completely, but it needs to rebalance, because fundamentally what we should be focused on is student destinations, what they achieve when they leave our school. Can we change everything, in education? No, but we can certainly influence. And I believe that high stakes accountability leads to high stakes behaviours. And I'm all for accountability, but you get, therefore, some schools taking part in questionable practices. We don't here. I'm proud of saying that, but we compete with, and I say that under advisement, we do compete with other schools, because that's the system we are in, who do game the system, off-roll students, and if I'm going to be completely honest, perhaps don't take a moral approach to student education. I believe that the vast majority of schools and head teachers and teachers do. But if you have high-stakes accountability, you get these high-stakes behaviour. Remodel it. Make sure you're focused on what really matters, which is where those students are in 5, 10, 15 years' time.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was great. Well, the question still remains, should the education system get reevaluated with how it works? I think it's been so fascinating to hear from genuine students and genuine teachers with what they think should change. And I just truly think that the years at high school shape you as a person, and it's so crucial that both students and teachers get it right. Me personally, I think there's two things that should change. First of all, the idea of coursework I think should get reevaluated. I think so many subjects are way better suited to doing coursework rather than written exams. And secondly, all the rules that are put in place in school need to be reinforced far more often. Students are just getting away with breaking rules and other students aren't. It just, for me, doesn't make sense. Well, students and teachers will face high school day in and day out, but what do you think?